Call the meeting to order. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and the city in which we live. Guide us this afternoon, or this morning, as we make any decision. In Christ's name, amen. Amen. This is a special call meeting of the Newnan City Council, August the 19th, 2024. The reason for this special call meeting is to conduct a public hearing, the second out of three to be held on the 2024 millage rate. We appreciate you being here today to listen to the presentation. And if you're a property owner in the city of Newnan and you're here today to speak, although the sign-in sheet indicates no one wants to speak, you may change your mind. This will be a public hearing. There will be no time limit on the total amount of time we take today to hear from you. You've made the effort to be here, and you're going to have the opportunity to speak, although each individual will have a time limit of 2 minutes. If you ask a question during that 2-minute period, the clock stops while staff or one of the council member answer your question, so you'll have a total of 2-minute time altogether to have your comments. Now, this is not a Board of Education meeting, and this is not a County Commissioners meeting. This is a meeting about the city of Newnan and our millage rate, or comments that you've got about your assessment on your property. Those comments ought to go directly to the tax assessor of Coweta County. That's where the city of Newnan derives their assessment, is actually from Coweta County. So with that, I'm going to call the public meeting to order and open it and ask Mr. Phillips if he'll go ahead and make his presentation.
Absolutely.
Thank you again for being here.
Mayor, members of council, citizens of Newnan, thank you for coming out, taking the time. As the mayor said, this is hearing number 2 of the required 3. The final hearing is tonight at 6:30. After the conclusion of tonight's hearing, the hearing will be closed, and there will be a consideration of an ordinance to set the millage rate for 2024. This is the second presentation. Apologize for the first meeting we had some audio technical difficulties, but we're back up and running. So thanks to Ben and the AV team to getting that all squared away. Again, the presentation that I'm going to be giving is available on our website at newnan.ga.gov. If you simply go down to our news links, you'll see a notice of tax increase, and this presentation is in there. It has been slightly updated from hearing number 1, so we have updated it on the website as well. Therefore, everything that's here today is available to our viewers at home. Real quick, Taxpayer Bill of Rights. This is why we're here today. This law went into effect in the state of Georgia in January of 2000, so this is our 24th year of following this protocol. But basically what this says is that if this governing body wants to adopt a millage rate higher than what is quote-unquote the rollback rate, then we must advertise and have 3 public hearings, issue a press release, advertise on our website before we can have consideration. In this particular case, our recommended rollback rate was 2.59, and the advertised rate was 3.12 mills. The rollback rate in Georgia is simply calculated based upon the cumulative amount of reassessed value in the city. It's not individually, it is cumulative for all properties. The more the reassessed value is, which we've all been hit with reassessment value, I know my personal property has as well, the higher that rollback will be. And you'll see on a slide later what that rollback history has been here for the city of Newnan. I do want to say, just for educational purposes, that when we say meal, every meal equals $1 per 1,000 of your home or your property value. And in the state of Georgia, 40% of your home value is what's taxed at. So if you own a $400,000 piece of property, you pay taxes on $160,000 of that. So just a little understanding of the process. Again, as I said, here we are, August 19th at 11:30. Our second of the 3 required public hearings. Again, tonight at 6:30 will be our third and final. I'm going to jump right into it. I'm not going to go through, I got a total of 34 slides, and I'm not going through 34 slides, but they're all available to you online. And I will actually use some of those slides if there are any questions to help answer your questions. But why? Number 1, to balance the budget. I'm going to show you a slide in a minute that shows you what the budget looks like, not only in the line item of property tax revenues, but the bottom line of our general fund if we were to take the rollback rate versus a 3.12. This body has a history of continually taking the rollback rate, which is a cumulative effect. Again, I will show you that slide in a minute that shows you the history of the Newnan City Council, Mayor and Council, of taking the rollback rate. It has been publicly noted in the Newnan Times-Herald that we did have a loss of a commercial taxpayer from the digest. It was our cancer treatment center. Not going to speak negatively. They brought a lot of value to the city of Newnan and Coweta County. They were just purchased by an entity that was a nonprofit entity, so they actually became exempt from paying property taxes and occupational tax renewals to the city to the tune of about $800,000 a year. This body, over the last few years, has made a decision to invest in our employees, particularly our public safety. We sat in this chambers about a year and a half ago discussing the vacancies that we had in public safety and how we could remedy that. We made investments there, and as I mentioned last week, we were at 100% staffing in both police and fire. So those investments have paid off, but those investments were not cheap. I think the starting salary for a police and a fireman is about $57,000 and change right now. But still, it's a lot to ask of your police officer and your fireman to protect our community, but it has worked. We have had an increasing dependence on local option sales tax. Sales tax is the largest revenue source in the city of Newnan. Sales tax exceeds $12 million a year for the city of Newnan, where property tax has generally been in the $6 million range. So sales tax has become twice the size of property taxes in the city of Newnan. But unfortunately, we've seen sales tax become a little bit flat. I think all of us have seen the impacts of inflation, and we've controlled some of our spending. So when we're seeing flat, we're not seeing growth in the category that we're used to seeing to cover some of the expenses and the investments that we've made. Couple that in 2025, we entered into a new agreement with Coweta County where we're going to be taking a little smaller distribution percentage because of our negotiations we did a couple of years ago. It's going to take about a 3.5% growth in our economy to have a net equal sales tax collections. That could be iffy. I know last month we saw a 7.5% decline in our sales tax. We still have 6 more months of collections to see where that goes. But those are just some of the impacts we could see. Inflationary expenses, there is a slide, and I will show if there's any questions. We're just like everyone else at home. We've seen expenses in purchasing police cars, in pine straw or gas, whatever it may be, repairs, maintenance contracts. So we're being hit just like everyone else is, unfortunately, at home. And then our service levels. There is an expectation for service levels, keeping the community clean and safe. That's two of the things we typically say in our staff meetings. Clean and safe community is a vibrant community. Balance the budget here real quick. The left side column is what I ran for the rollback rate of 2.59. You can see in that line item, our budget for the taxes for 24, property taxes, was $7.4 million. If we take the rollback rate, if this body chooses the rollback rate, we're about $1.2 million short in that line item. Same thing, I calculated the effects of the 3.12 millage rate. It just simply gives us a little bit above the budget, about $8,500 above the budget. If I take those rates and I extrapolate it into the entire fund, all revenues and all expenditures, and that's even with expenditures, we've asked the staff to limit overtime. I asked staff to eliminate overtime, then we had a storm Saturday night. Capital purchasing, some traveling, etc. At the rollback rate, I am projecting about a $530,000 overall deficit into our general fund. I'm sorry, an $898,000 at the rollback rate for next year. So therefore, we're going to have some budget challenges not only this year to finish out 2024, but we'll be starting some challenges next year at the 2.59. Sorry about that confusion. Here is the history of this body taking the rollback rate. What you're seeing there, the orange line is the actual rate adopted by mayor and council. You can see it trending down, especially here in the last few years where we've gone from 357 to 305 to 275. Going all the way back to 2012, this body has taken the rollback rate 11 of the past 13 years. When I mentioned earlier that it is cumulative, there are certain cities and certain governing bodies that have a history of keeping the rate flat. So if we would have just simply calculated, and I'm not saying we should have, the 4.39 rate, what it would have produced in 2023 would be $4.3 million. So that's the cumulative impact of the rollback. All right, here's an important slide. What is the impact of the potential tax increase to a property owner in the city? Councilmember Guillaume, I went ahead and added a few more examples on there for you.
Thank you.
So I've added anywhere from a $250,000 piece of property to a $650,000 piece of property. The average home value in the city of Newnan is just over $350,000. And if you take the $350,000 line, you can see the annual difference is about $73.50 annually. That is basically $21 per every $100,000 of assessed value. So every step up is a $21 increase. Again, I had a lot of slides in the previous one about benchmarking, about comparing millage rates, how the budget is broke down. But if there's any questions about those, or if any citizens have any questions, I'd be happy to use those as reference points. I think we reserve time to hear from our constituents.
Okay, so this is an opportunity for any one who is attending the meeting to come forward and speak to the issue. Yes, sir, if you'll come forward and state your name and address, that'd be great. Thank you. Welcome. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. I'm Gary Martin, 39 Jackson Street, a few houses down the way here, right across from the beautiful military park. I wasn't going to speak this morning. I really don't have a lot to say other than thank you for your presentation, Mr. Phillips. I come from a background of business, just like many of you have. And I look at the rates, I look at the millage rate proposal, I look at what I'm reading and seeing, and I tried to attend the county meeting recently. And I was one of those that got rejected at the door because they had too many people there. And I love to see the excitement, if you want to call it that word, that people have. But here's my question. Everything comes down to, when you deal with budgets, and I've dealt with them all my life in the business environment. So I understand what goes into them. What I'm not hearing here, what I'm hearing is that we're wanting to consider a pretty dramatic increase in millage rates. I understand what's behind that. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I don't have a specific base to challenge it as of yet. Here's one thing that I would say, and I'll sit down. What any business has to approach and has to deal with when they start this kind of an environment and a study is where can we tighten our own belts? You've mentioned a little bit of it, okay? And I know you're faced with it every day. All of you think about this. But my history and my own personal involvement, whether it's my personal life with my family here, is what do we look at, even as hard as it may be, to say we've got to limit what we're doing here on these increases. And I know you probably addressed it in one way or another, but I'm not hearing nearly as much here as I think a lot of people would. In the private conversations I'm having now with my neighbors up and down Jackson Street, over on College Street, and that sort of area is, folks, we got to have more about how do we control this? How do we cut this down? So that's my question to you is, what are you really doing specifically to cut back, to offset this? My own personal situation, my taxes are slated to go up $1,000 in a year, 20% increase. That's pretty heavy. Not everybody's going to have that same one, but I look at that and say, I might be able to scrape that up somewhere. But I'd like to know more about what you're doing to really offset this, rather than just telling us you've got increases here and increases there. I understand that, we all do. So What are you doing to cut back to offset this?
I'm
I'm not hearing enough on that, sir.
I appreciate your comments, and I'll ask you a question, though, before I ask Mr. Phillips to speak on the cutbacks. What dollar amount of thousand is the city?
What, sir, say that again?
What dollar amount of the $1,000 is the city?
He's talking about county and city. How much is the city?
How much of that is city? I mean,
I can't answer that.
Okay.
The assessment I got that showed I had a reassessment, that's what I'm talking about. Mine went up 20, and I don't know that that's gonna be final. It may not, it probably won't.
Right.
But that's what it currently looks like to me, is that my taxes are going up, the real estate, 20%, $1,000 roughly. That's what and I couldn't give you that specific breakdown, but I will, because I didn't bring the paper with me. I wasn't actually planning to step up here, but I just wanted to say,
Sure.
we got to do more about cutting back to offset. And
Yeah.
I'd like to know what you really are doing, because I don't think is being addressed.
I'm going to ask Mr. Phillips to address some of that.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Ms. Shea, if you will, first real quick, go to slide 16, and I maybe can help answer the mayor's question and Mr. Martin's question about the breakdown. This particular slide, if you can go to full mode there, actually takes that average $350,000 house in the city of Noonan, and it shows where the breakdown of your taxes would go. Total taxes would be about $3,461. And you can see over 60% goes to the school system, about 25+% goes to Quita County, and 12.8 goes to the city of Noonan. So if it's $1,000, if you do the rough 12.8, about $128 increase would be to the city of Noonan. So good question. Now if you would go to slide 11 for me, and a very, very good question again about cuts. And certainly I think that is a necessary part of this process, Mr. Martin. The one thing that makes it a little bit difficult, and I'm not saying that we're not going to do this effort, for the millage rate that we're setting in 2024, we're actually setting it for a budget that was adopted in January. We are 7.5, almost 8 months complete with our 12-month budget. We've been pretty much fully staffed. A lot of our contracts and things were executed at the beginning of the year. We have asked staff, and I have several department directors in here today that can attest to this, to ask them to look at cost control. Ms. Kelsey, our assistant finance manager over finance and HR, she's been going through the budgets line by line to see where we can do some cost controls. So we are making efforts. I know this government body, or this elected body, we are going to be having a local retreat here in the fall, setting some priorities for 2025 to see where we can develop efficiencies, see where we can maybe cut some costs, whether that is going to be in the terms of travel, whether it's going to be in computer supplies, whether it's going to be a combination of everything. But I will say, looking at this particular slide, to make significant cuts in our budget, we are 78% of our budget is people. If we want to make some serious cuts in the budget, it would absolutely have to involve the staff in some way or the other, whether that's in their benefits, whether that's in their salaries, or whether that's in positions, which those impact services. And not that we won't give it a hard look-see, I think we will give it a hard look-see. We are already receiving some of our renewals next year. I know we have received our renewal for our liability insurance program. We're seeing an increase. I know that we just received our valuation on our pension contributions for 2025. It went up $500,000, but this body has already taken some actions to try to keep that under control. We froze new entries into the pension earlier this year. We understand the cost of the pension, so people that are out there receiving that benefit now won't be affected. But there will be no new entries. So we got a lot of hard decisions to make, but we're willing to look at them very deeply, Gary.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. If you'll come forward, state your name and address, please. That'd be great. Thanks.
Don Green, I live 3301
We'll need
Commonwealth.
to, our recording system won't pick you up, plus the people who are watching us online.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Good
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name's Don Green, I live at 3301 Commonwealth Industrial here in the city of Noonan. Question, just looking at the budget there, could someone explain to me exactly, when you look at the cuts in the training budgets, what's the training budgets consist of?
Mr. Phillips?
Yeah, training budget is going to greatly vary by department. I mean, for example, a police officer has their post-required training that they have to do to remain in compliance as a certified police officer. The same with the fire department. You know, training for an engineer, they're gonna have so many hours for their continuing education for their certificates. There's training for planning staff, there's training opportunities for elected officials, there's newly elected officials training. I mean, what we try to do at times to cut costs, because it's hard, I think there's a negative impact when you don't train, when you don't stay abreast with the newest practices, best practices. But what we have done in the past, when it gets tight, you try to bring the training in-house. You try, instead of traveling somewhere to go get the training, there's efficiencies from bringing the trainers to us. And that's something we've also done in PD. I know he has actually a training division, and he's able to do a lot of that. So I think that's what we will look at, is trying to cut some of the travel costs associated with training, the hotel stays, the travel reimbursements, et cetera.
Okay, just asking the question, I know,
Good question.
I think come November, we're all going to be challenged greatly, whether it goes one way or the other. And I think we'll all be looking at our individual budgets and cutting there where we're going to have to cut. But no, I'm not suggesting, particularly to the officers in the fire department, that they do any cutting. We're the proud parents of a police officer in Ackworth, Georgia. So, guys, I appreciate what you do every day. Just pray for you, you know, every night for your safety. But just wanted to learn a little bit more about what is the training budget. So it's specifically staff budgeting for whatever training to the job they're in.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
thank you,
correct.
gentlemen.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here today. Anyone else? Yes, sir. If you'll come forward and state your name and address, please. Thank you for being here.
My name is Luke Ayers, 31 Savannah Street. We also have several properties, 6 properties in the Chalk Level community. I want to first just say to anyone that's live or anyone that's here, it is my hopes that no budgets would be cut, that no staffing, we are for a tax increase if it is necessary, which means I know only budgets that are added are going to be necessary. No one's getting in my 30 years of being here in Newnan, no one is getting raises that are extra ordinary compared to Georgia. I do have one question for a lot of our residents who can't come here, whether without having rides or being elderly. The tax was a home is taxed. I'm mostly asking about a paid off home, someone who's lived in their home for more than 70 years. I'm correct that it is taxed on 40% of their current value. And what percentage, is it a 12% out of their total homeowner's tax, property tax, that goes straight to the city? Is that correct?
12.8.
12.8%. So once is it fair to say, if I'm helping these constituents and people who love to vote for everything that goes on, that their property tax, when they pay it, they need to look at their 12.8% of that will go to the city? And that's it?
That is correct, Mr. Harris.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure I understand. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Haven't asked council if they've got any questions. You got anything? And Mr. Shell?
One thing too, when you did your 160,000, then your homestead exemption comes off of that, doesn't it? So it's really less.
That is correct.
So
I
if
mean,
you owner occupied, instead of 160, it might be 150.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation about homesteads, and what we mean by homestead is if you own and live in your property, you're eligible to receive the homestead. And in Coweta County, there are homesteads in the Coweta County, and there's the senior homestead for the Coweta County school system. But it does come off of that 40% number, correct?
Correct. Anyone else in the audience who's attended would like to speak? Oh,
I don't want to speak, but I do have a question. It's related, for you to refresh my memory, please, when we had a one-on-one. We were talking about the loss of the large commercial tax from the digest. and we talked about it being a one-time event. Can you explain for the public what that simply means? This is a one-time event this year, but how does that look for next year and the years to come?
Well, I think what I mean by a one-time event, you know, their assessed value between their real and personal property was approximately $100 million. That only comes off one time. So we're going to take the impact this year. Ms. Shea, if you would go to chart 12, please. And this is very difficult, and I don't want anyone to worry about the fine print, but what I want to show you is this third column from the right here is where the new growth shows up. When there's a permit issue for new construction, the new growth shows up in that column. When I talked about the reassessment when I was at the podium, that's the left column. Well, this right column, you see red numbers. That is a rarity, and that is simply the result of that entity coming off of the digest. Normally, we see that third column in the 30 to 50, sometimes 60 million to the plus. This year, it was a 60 million to the negative. Next year, that won't be there. That's why I'm saying it's a one-time impact.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else in council?
I just kind of follow up on his question. So part of his question was also if that was a one-time impact, what's the implications moving forward from that?
Well, I think the implications is, number one, we know. We have the ability to plan for it. I think that's the most important thing. And next year, when that's a positive again, then you get to actually, because when you take a rollback rate, Ms. Shea, if you would go to 13, the very next one. Again, small digits, I apologize. When you take the rollback rate, historically, taking the rollback rate, when you have positive growth, you still get a net increase in taxes levy. But this particular year, which is a rarity again, when you take the rollback rate and the growth is a negative, the rollback rate results in a levy that's less than the previous year's levy, which was not really the intended consequence of the law. It's just what happened because they came off the digest. Kind of complicated.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else in the audience? Citizens who took time out today to come to the meeting? Yes, ma'am. You'll come forward, please.
Sorry. I'm Rebecca McCullum, and I live at 10 Plantation Drive. And I understand line item issues and things that you can't change, but other sources of revenue that are explored, I mean, if it can happen in one year, it can happen in additional years. Obviously, staffing, those are things that you'd like ideally based on growth of community to not have to deal with because you need them. So additional sources of revenue, which this may not be popular, but I know sometimes the cameras living and running uptown, around town, the speed limits are posted at 25, but most mornings, most people aren't doing 25. Police officers can't be everywhere, and I know that may not be a popular thought process to put in the cameras, but I know sometimes that can catch a lot of that issue and I'm not trying to say create revenue, but it could. So just a thought. Didn't know.
And in school zones too.
So.
Ms. Phillips, I'm not going to comment on that.
But I will say this.
I will.
Go ahead.
I'm the number one proponent of speed limits, and we fought to get to 25, and they put out the speed limit lights, occasionally slow them down. But as you know, I see you on the street at 6:30 in the morning, people are going to work and they're running late and they think they can go any speed. And you try to catch them, but it's hard to catch as many because it's different ways. And so it's one of those things with cameras we looked at and, trying to find people. And supposedly it's more expensive sometimes to administer than the resources.
In fact, I think the trend across the country is to do away with those type of cameras
There is some
inside.
scrutiny on some of the camera enforcement signals. Going back to your question about other sources, we do agree. I mean, I think as staff, we're going to ask this body during the retreat to look at the fee schedule. I mean, we don't want to make things too expensive, but there are certain areas, we're going to ask you to look at some of our permit fee schedules. So, yeah, we're going to take a look at that as well. Just for FYI, police fines is approximately 2% of the entire general fund revenue.
So,
Well, and I know that wasn't a popular thing, so I wasn't trying to trap anybody into making a comment that might come back to get them,
Yeah,
but
for example, and I'm not criticizing any other agency, we don't run radar on the interstate. And you may say, well, why don't you run radar on the interstate? There's money to be made. We are of the opinion that our officers are more valuable policing the city
I
and
agree.
not running radar on the interstate.
I personally agree. I have family in law
We lose some
enforcement, so.
revenue.
But, you know, and then, like, my other thought are, some things aren't, maybe some permits or annual passes. I know as a community, we enjoy what we have, so sometimes we might be willing to pay an annual pass to enjoy certain things and you, I don't know. I know that's not popular either, but fees never are, so, but thank you.
but I would give the traveling public a warning that just because we're not on the interstate, doesn't mean the county and the state patrol are not on the interstate. So, there you go.
And to address like the permits and stuff like that, like the city pool, there is a cost to go into the city pool. There, you know, there are some things where there are fees.
Anyone else? Okay, Ms. Phillips, anything else?
No, sir.
Council,
Council.
anything else? Okay, we have another meeting this evening at 6:30. And at that particular meeting would be a public hearing like this, opportunity for other people to come in and speak. And at that time, we'll take a vote on the 2024 millage rate. So we appreciate all of you taking your time to be invested in your community and having enough to care about your community to come in and listen to why we're embarking on this proposed millage rate increase. We appreciate your time today. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Motion a second to adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you all for being here today.